Good afternoon and welcome to this week's GEMA VIEW Virtual Industry Talk focused on marketing and communications. These weekly virtual talks are sponsored by the Georgetown Entertainment and Media Alliance and the Cawley Career Center. Thank you for taking time out of your day to connect virtually with fellow Hoyas for this industry-specific discussion. I'm Justin Spence, Associate Director of Regional Alliances at Georgetown, and I'll be facilitating today's virtual talk. Before we get started, I'd like to share a few tips and reminders. This event is being held via Zoom meeting, as you can see, and each participant has been muted upon entry. Please keep yourself muted during the panel discussion to cut down on any background noise or disruptions. The panelists will take questions at the end of this discussion. Please send in your questions as you have them using the chat function on the Zoom control panel. If you're having any technical difficulties or issues, please submit those concerns via the chat function as well. Without any further ado, I'm pleased to turn things over to Rich Batista.
Good afternoon for those of you on the East Coast. Good morning for those on the West Coast or somewhere in between. I'm Rich Batista. I'm the founder and chairman of the Georgetown Entertainment Media Alliance, known as GEMA. I'm thrilled to be with you all for this talk. This is the fifth of a series of 6 that we'll be doing. And this one will be all about the world of marketing in entertainment media. We're thrilled to have a terrific panel with us today, who I will now introduce. I'm going to first say hello to Neal Gorevic. Neal is the Global Head of Marketing Strategy at Spotify. We have Alyse Brehm. Alyse is the Marketing Manager for NFL Media. Hello, Alyse. And then we have Klontz, who is a coordinator at United Talent Agency, otherwise known as UTA, and does a lot in the marketing world there, which she will explain. So thank you, panelists. I hope you're all well. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Great. Why don't we just very quickly start and sort of level set, if I could ask each of you to say, your title again, maybe what school you were at Georgetown when you graduated, and then give us like a one-liner on a 1 or 2-liner on what you do in your job. So Alyse, you want to start?
Sure. So I am the marketing manager at the NFL. So I am essentially a project manager for our campaigns. Campaigns that I oversee are the draft and Thursday Night Football, as well as our NFL Network tune-in campaigns. And I was in American Studies major.
Great. Thank you. Neal.
Hey, everybody. I was a graduate of Georgetown from 2006 from the college, and I was an English major. And I'm currently at Spotify, as Rich mentioned, and I lead the strategy function there in the marketing practice. And my team focuses on 2 things. One is we lead all of our global integrated brand marketing. So those are programs that are running across many parts of the world where we're talking about Spotify and what makes it different. And then we also lead what's called strategic growth initiatives. So this is helping Spotify launch new products, new services, and new markets around the world to help us reach new audience segments that are currently underserved by our products today.
Terrific. And Kara.
And hi, I'm Kara. I am a coordinator at United Talent Agency. I graduated Georgetown in 2016. I was in the business school and majored in international business. And I've been at UTA for the past 2 years in our corporate consulting group, which does entertainment marketing for big companies like General Motors, Google, Delta, LinkedIn, Lyft. So I'll get into more of what exactly that means later on.
Terrific. Thank you. Well, one thing that's great about this panel is that you're all in varied roles in marketing. You're really covering different disciplines and different areas of focus and functionality. So I think that'll make for an interesting, diverse discussion. Neal, I want to talk to each of you sort of about your careers and your career journeys thus far. So you're at Georgetown, you were in the college, you're an English major. At that time, did you think you wanted to work in entertainment media? Did you have other ambitions? Help us go through that and then help us understand kind of what your first job was and how you broke in, so to speak.
Sure, yeah, it definitely wasn't a linear path, I would say. I think the great thing about Georgetown is the ability for you to study a diverse set of things while in your time there. And so while I was in school, I was studying English and a lot of liberal arts topics, but I was also learning a lot about business. And while we didn't have kind of the equivalent of the business minor at that point, I took a lot of finance and accounting classes to really understand how to navigate the business world, which was really helpful. And I found myself gravitating towards creative business industries and wanting to learn more. And there was two groups that I was part of in college that were really helpful there. One was the Baker Scholars, and then the second was GEMA, which helped me understand what are some of the industries that I could go into. And then so when I was graduating, I was kind of looking at all of the typical Georgetown paths of finance and consulting and trying to understand if that was the right thing for me. And it just didn't feel right. And I wound up coming across a sector of companies in the digital advertising space. And I joined a company called Razorfish out of school, which was one of the early .com agencies, but then really kind of grew and became a really big international brand in the mid 2000s. And so I joined the strategy practice there, actually working for a bunch of Hoyas. And it was a really great foundation for me to learn a lot about the media business and just really hone my general business acumen. And so it was a really interesting time as well to be doing that in the mid 2000s, because that's when a lot of media companies were going through some pretty seismic transformations, exploring how their digital business models were being constructed, how they were going to make money off of this space. And fortunately for me, Razorfish was working with a lot of those companies at the time, like Condé Nast and New York Times, and those were some of my early projects. So I knew from the get-go that marketing and media was the place I wanted to be.
Terrific. Thank you. Kara, how about you?
Yeah, so coming into Georgetown, I loved entertainment. I loved sports. I was an athlete at Georgetown. So I kind of had an inkling that I wanted to work somewhere at the intersection of entertainment, brands and sports, but didn't know exactly where. And again, Georgetown was amazing in the sense that, yeah, I got to, go to the business school and learn all the traditional facets of a business education. But I discovered GEMA pretty early on at Georgetown, and was able to really use that as a tool to discover, okay, I know I like sports entertainment. How can I translate that into a career? So I did the GEMA externship my senior year in New York, and I was lucky enough to get my first job at Sports Illustrated, working really on the content arm. So I was writing and producing and hosting and reporting, and really like in the weeds on the content side of the business. And it was so interesting, and I learned a ton. And after 2 years, I kind of took a step back and said, okay, I know what it's like to be on the ground floor and produce content for an incredible, iconic brand. I love being in the world of entertainment. I love working with athletes, but I really missed the strategic thinking and the big picture planning that I really had a hand on in business school. So I took a step back and I interviewed informationally with about 30 different people, trying to figure out again, like, okay, how do I pivot exactly into more of the business side of the entertainment industry? And that is how I ended up landing at UTA. And, because we're at a traditional talent agency, sometimes it's hard to describe exactly what our group does, but essentially, instead of representing actors and writers and directors, we represent these big companies, and we really help them be relevant in culture and navigate the world of entertainment. So,
often these companies, they're from outside the world, so they don't really know the best way to penetrate entertainment media. So you're really helping guide them, right, to figure out the best way to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. And every client comes to us with a different challenge. Coca-Cola was a client that we worked with for a while, and, they came to us with they had this amazing brand, Smart Water. And, Jennifer Aniston had been the face of the brand for over a decade. And, they said, hey, our consumer is younger now. They want a fresher face. They don't relate with Jennifer quite as much as they did. Who do we, which talent should we go out and partner with? So for about 1.5 years, we ideated and strategized around new faces for the brand. And we, inevitably landed on Ben Simmons, who's an NBA player, and Gal Gadot, the actress in Wonder Woman. And we helped execute talent deals and really see through the marketing strategy and campaign with the brand. And often we are working with other marketing agencies. So we ourselves are not a creative agency. We aren't filming commercials and helping put together print ads. So we often work hand in hand with other marketing agencies to really help these brands flourish and help execute their goals.
Great, excellent. And then Alyse, you're different than Neal and Kara in that you started at the NFL right out of school, right? And you've been there ever since. So great, love to hear. I mean, it's obviously an incredibly competitive place to get a job. So would love to hear how you're able to make that happen and how your career sort of moved on there.
Absolutely.
And also at Georgetown, what were you thinking as well? I'd love to hear that too.
Yeah. So at Georgetown, similar to as Kara described, I knew I was interested in entertainment and media. As I mentioned, was an American Studies major, which I absolutely loved as a major. It gave me a lot of flexibility to take television classes and more cultural and societal classes as well, that quite frankly, even today, I still go back and pull from. So in that time, I discovered GEMA and was lucky enough to go on the GEMA externship to Los Angeles to really try and understand what roles existed in the industry. I think I am a poster child for a GEMA success story because thanks to that externship, I made a connection with the VP of marketing at the NFL, who I happened to stay in touch with when I was looking for a job. She called me up and said, "Hey, Alyse, it's August. This is a really difficult time of year. Would you be willing to join for 3 weeks to help us just get some campaigns off the ground? I know you're looking for a job. Would love to bring you in just for a few weeks." I bet you can tell where this is going. 3 weeks has become 7 years later. I think it's it's a testament to really the power of those Georgetown connections and staying in touch. I think in my time at the NFL, we have a pretty lean team. So it's been a great opportunity to wear a lot of hats, ask a lot of questions. In my time, I've done more affiliate marketing related work. I've also done more production events-based marketing work. And now, at this time, it's more of that project marketing manager, which we really want to get dorky about it. It's essentially the quarterback for any marketing campaign. So I get to work with any sort of the ideation and the briefing process, working with creative agencies on what the creative concept will look like, media buys, and then any sort of execution. So I'm really loving my role and certainly forever grateful for the role that GEMA helped play as well.
I think the other nice lesson from that is just your ability to just be opportunistic. They came to you and said, we need you for 3 weeks. They probably wanted you ASAP, right? They didn't say, we need you in 5 weeks from now. They probably said, we need you tomorrow. And I don't know where you lived at the time, but you were able to jump on that and make it happen. And that's a real important insight, I think, for everyone on this call and in this Zoom room is, being opportunistic can lead to, a great success story like Alyse. And as we always say, getting in is in some cases the hardest part. Once you're in, you can really show your wares. Thanks for that. Neal, I'd love to talk a little bit more about what your role entails. You mentioned the two different pieces of it, right? The strategy for the overall Spotify and then for maybe new products. Can you drill down a little more on that? For instance, on creating the global strategy, is it about acquiring customers? Is it about the branding? Is it a combo? Like what goes into that piece of it?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because of the complex nature of Spotify's business model. And so there's really three types of marketing that Spotify does. There's subscription acquisition marketing, because we are what we call a freemium business model. So we've got a free tier, and then we have a subscription tier that you could be a $9.99 plan subscriber or a student or join the family tier, which is the lion's share of the revenue for the business. We also have a whole host of content on the platform. So we've got over 50 million tracks, and we have over 1 million podcasts that we've added in the last year and a half. And many of those podcasts are originals and exclusives that we're proactively investing in or acquiring through companies like Gimlet or The Ringer. And then we have our brand. And so the brand really kind of sits above it all. And the purpose of it is to represent Spotify's point of view and culture, to really connect with customers through our content and the artists on our platform. And so when we're thinking about what our strategy is, it has to be a composition of all three of those coming together and working together.
Right.
The complicating factor of that is the company has been around for over a decade, but we've grown up in various stages and are in different stages of maturity around the world. So we've got places like the Nordics, where we're very well penetrated and we've been for some time. And then we have places like Russia, which we launched last month. And there's 89 other countries in between. So we have to think about how we're telling that story in a way that is appealing to audiences in different parts of the world. So a lot of my job is, one, aligning all of those different aspects of marketing into a cohesive story so that we can tell Spotify's point of view and our key points of differentiation in the marketplace. And then two, tailoring it with our teams around the world in a way that is meaningful to those audiences that we are going to grow with most actively over the course of the year. So in line with that, there's a lot of collaborative work. It's not done in a silo. And I think that that's actually one of the great things about a marketing function, is that marketing often sits horizontally in a business and works with product teams or content teams or other line management teams. So a lot of what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis is really working with all of those teams to understand how to position the things that Spotify is prioritizing, and then eventually helping them determine how to commercialize them. So what's the right investment plan we should be putting against these kinds of projects? How much money should we be spending on acquiring users? Why should we be acquiring a certain user over another type of user? All of those are really fundamental decisions where a creative practice of determining a brand meets the business practice of determining how to manage a P&L.
And I assume another big piece of that is, where should we be putting our dollars?
Absolutely.
And I'm sure there's always a constant revisiting of that, right? I'm sure what worked 4 years ago may be quite different today, or not. You can tell us, but I assume that's another big piece, right?
Absolutely, very much so. Yeah, and it varies in different parts of the world as well too. So the mix of different tactics that we're employing has changed a lot, and a lot of it has changed with the trajectory of the business. So we've got more direct relationships with talent now through, say, our podcaster relationships. And so some of the work that that Kara was highlighting around how do you use these representatives to really tell the story of content and a product offering are now coming more to the forefront of what Spotify is doing versus 4 years ago, when we were thinking a lot more about the subscription economics of the business and kind of the rote growth model.
Yeah. And I guess one other piece I would wonder about is, because it's a global role, which can be quite complex, I assume a big part of your job, now that you're a pretty senior guy there, is just managing people on a global basis, right?
Yeah, I'm lucky to have a team that's pretty much represented on every continent, which is great.
Wow.
Or continent we're
Do you
operating
ever
in.
sleep, or what do you do? It's a lot of time zones.
It is a lot of time zones. It does turn into some early morning and late calls, but I think it's, I think particularly coming from an environment like Georgetown, where it is designed as a company as a university to be internationally minded. It was really fantastic to move into a company that is internationally minded as well, and learn not only about how business is conducted in different ways in different parts of the world, but learn more about cultures around the world. And I think that that's been a really real positive benefit for me from that experience.
That's great. Alyse, at the NFL, obviously an incredibly popular brand, I'm sure a very demanding company to work for. What are some of especially now in your current role, what are some of the important skills you have to possess in your role to be successful in your role, or which ones you've had to develop over time to do that? You mentioned the quarterbacking piece. I'm sure, so there's some skills around that, I'm sure, but what else?
Yeah, I think being super detail oriented, I know it sounds generic, but when you are trying to put together a marketing plan that'll last throughout the course of a season, 17 weeks, and you need to be hyper specific of when we want to be in market, knowing, especially a lot of my role is pushing tune in. So it's really making sure that you're getting all of those details lined up, making sure that also you're willing and able to pivot. Hey, our TV buy is not working as well as we thought. Let's put more money on in Instagram. Let's put more money on social. Those are sorts of decisions also that it really helps to have that clear plan laid out. I think, again, this sounds generic, but I can't emphasize enough just the role of communication. You know, I am working constantly with producers who might have a more relaxed way of communicating, and then I have to turn and speak with one club, one team, and every team has their own way of communicating. And I think just being able to adapt to whichever group you're talking to in order to relay your point is something that it's taken me some time to figure out, but it's been extremely helpful and beneficial. It's something that I really like about NFL media is that, you know, at any element of, we are such a broad company that we really hit on pretty much all elements of media. You want to learn about podcasting, there's someone there that does podcasting. We have in studio sets, you want to learn about biz dev. So through that, it's a lot of different ways of thinking, and therefore a lot of different ways of communicating.
I assume financially too, you don't have to be a finance expert, of course, but you're obviously, I assume, collaborating with that department often too, right? You got budgets to hit, yes. You know, and I'm sure they need to be met and closely monitored and the like.
Oh yes, our creative team is always coming to us with, hey, what's a few more thousand? We went a little over on this shoot. You don't mind, do you? So also trying to figure out how that padding comes into play, but also anticipating. So certainly the financials are a huge part of the bottom line, and making sure things are where they need to be.
Kara, a similar question for you. You know, for those of you on the call who don't know, you know, the agency world, not unlike I'm sure Spotify and NFL, very hardworking, demanding culture. There's, you know, long hours and a lot of frenetic and chaos and pace. And so would love to, and none of that backdrop, would love to understand in your role, especially because you're doing a lot of client liaising, you know, what are some of the key skills that you need in your role?
Yeah, Rich, you nailed it on the head. I am definitely in a client-facing role. So we are interacting and working with external business partners all day long. So I think, honestly, being a people person is a really important skill to have, not only in my department, but just at agencies in general. You know, working at a talent agency, your primary function in most departments is to help people in their careers. You want to help these artists and, you know, the people clients at companies really flourish and help them succeed. So I think that, you know, day in and day out, you're interacting not only with tons of colleagues, but also with people that you know, are helping along the way. So interpersonal skills, I think, are critical. But I think another important thing in my role in the agency in general is creativity and curiosity. A lot of what we do in my department on a day-to-day basis can be pretty creative. You know, we're helping these brands create new strategies, and also, you know, even in the nitty-gritty, we're helping build big presentations and what we call decks that will often be the deliverable, and, you know, they want to look good and also contain a bunch of information. So there's tons of creativity in a role like mine in my department. And then just curiosity. I mean, I think especially at UTA, curiosity is a key to success. What's cool about working at a talent agency is, you know, you get to sit next to colleagues who work in music and film and television and podcasting and production and esports. It's a great place to be if you're kind of curious about all different sides of entertainment, because, you know, on a day-to-day basis, I'm calling my colleagues in music because we have a client who has a question about some concert that's happening in Sweden, or, you know, we're calling our colleagues at Clutch Sports Group because we have a brand that wants to do a deal with LeBron, or, you know, Chevy comes to us and they're like, hey, we want to be in a new big movie. Can you read a bunch of scripts for us? So we're calling our colleagues in the MP Lit department and getting a bunch of scripts and reading scripts. So I think being curious about all different sides of entertainment is a really nice thing to have in our group.
I think for you, even though you're, you know, a relatively recent alum, because you had that prior experience in creating content in video and in sports specifically in production. I'm sure, you may be able to lean on those as areas that maybe some of your peers don't have, So
Yeah.
also when you're ideating, I assume that helps you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because I feel like at Sports Illustrated, I was absolutely on the other side of things where, the strategy group would come up with this great idea and they'd hand it to us and they'd be like, okay, go do it. Whereas now I'm kind of on the opposite thing. I'm on the strategy side building out. So I think I have an understanding of when we're asking creative teams to create something, like the logistics and the realities on the ground floor from my previous role. And then just working with talent. I was in an incredible position at Sports Illustrated, incredibly lucky to work with some amazing talent across events and just on the editorial side, and understanding how to make talent comfortable and how to prioritize the goals that are important to them, I think is critical in balancing, any type of partnership.
I think another important thing for the audience to know too is, since you're more on the servicing side and you're serving clients, I started out as an investment banker where you're completely servicing clients. I mean, it is a job where the client's always right. I mean, you have to work at the client's behest, and you need to do what they need you to do, and typically on the timelines they need. So just talk a little bit about the importance of not just being a good people person, but also understanding the importance of serving a client. Neal's the kind of guy, or Alyse the kind of person who's going to call you maybe at one time to be their client. So they know what I'm talking about. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is the client's happiness and success in their endeavors and the brand's success overall. So, all the time we'll have a project given to us by a client that they're really excited about in the moment. And we'll spend 6 months and I will work on something. Yeah. At the beginning of quarantine, I worked on a project for 4 months, day in, day out, weekends, nights. I was exhausted and so excited about it because it was an area in sports that I was really passionate about. And then we present this big project that we've poured our heart and souls into, and they come back and they're like, hey guys, this is great, but as a brand, we've decided to pivot and this is no longer our priority. And it's, especially during COVID, that is completely understandable and happens all the time. Budgets shift. So right. I think you just have to have an understanding that even if the work you've produced is fantastic, if it's no longer a priority to the brand, or if one of the million different pieces has shifted, you can find yourself saying goodbye to a project that you have worked on, hard for a long time.
Yeah,
but
that's a great example.
Yeah, it's just, I think it's having an understanding of the people you work with as clients, and on a very human level. I think one of the keys is just getting to know your clients. Like, I think one of the hardest parts for us right now is we're not getting drinks and lunch, and I'm not going and hanging out with some of the clients that I consider friends at this point. Just getting to know them as humans, I think, is important too.
Yeah, great. Neal, I'd love, with your job at Spotify, if you wouldn't mind, maybe giving some insight or peek inside for the audience here about maybe one of your important strategic decisions you made that you thought really helped catapult Spotify, or an important strategic move you made from a marketing standpoint. Is anything you could sort of think about, or even something you're working on now, not obviously giving us confidential information, but something that, again, has, you think, made a difference in the kind of work you do?
One project that I'm particularly proud of, that I've been a part of since I started with the company, is at the end of every year, Spotify presents a gift to our users that we call Wrapped, which is these data stories that we deliver to our users around their listening behavior, and we connect it to really interesting cultural moments throughout the year. And 2016, when I started there, was the first year that we really scaled this to a global advertising push with these stories, being delivered around the world, and we've been iterating on it ever since then. And it's been really gratifying to see how that project has evolved over time, because it's effectively turned into a bit of a cultural phenomenon in of itself, where we have many users that are actively seeking this out, and they're contacting us and commenting on social media about how they want to do things to change their listening behavior so that they can get ready for their next Wrapped.
Right.
But it, and I think that that's really gratifying to see a marketing program really influence a user base in a meaningful way. But I think the thing that's also been really meaningful for us is the role that it plays in culture and our ability to use music and audio consumption as a lens of what's happening in the world. And so from 2016, where we were going through, the cycles of the election and everything that was happening there, through 2017 and 2018, where the many things were happening internationally, to this year in particular, and telling the story of 2020, it's been a really interesting journey to understand how the tone of a brand can change and flex with the tone of the world.
Yeah, interesting. Alyse, similar question for you. Is something you can point to that you feel like where you really made an extra difference? Or...
Sure. I think without a doubt, it was this past draft. It was a whirlwind of an experience, and I think just to set it up, in my role as the project lead, I have two responsibilities when it comes to marketing the draft. The first is to drive attendance, and the second is to drive tune-in and viewership. So I could spend like an hour talking about what what entailed over the weeks. But for those who may not have been so close, our draft took place in late April. It ended up being, it was supposed to take place in Las Vegas. We were going to have a red carpet on the Bellagio fountain. Prospects were going to be on a pontoon boat that would take them out. So Kara, when you're talking about really amazing, fun ideas that you then have to just table, that came to mind for me, because what ended up happening is it wasn't until April 6th that it was confirmed that we were doing a totally virtual draft. So we had to move completely so quickly to change our marketing campaign. We had to strip any sort of Vegas promotion from it. We had to really answer any sort of questions to fans of what they can expect when it comes to the virtual draft. The truth of the matter is, we really didn't know until about a week or two out what to expect either.
Right.
So it was an educational process. It was amazing to see all of the operations that went into it, and working with any sort of medical staff for how we were going to execute it. And it ended up being the most watched draft ever. There was also no any sort of sports competition, but it was a major feat to pull together this live 3-day production in a time when there was just complete uncertainty, and really feeling like we were giving the country and the nation some gleam of hope when there was so much uncertainty.
Yeah, no, especially in April, where it was still a lot of uncertainty. The fact that you all pulled that off so brilliantly, it's quite a feather in your cap.
Thank you.
Let's move on to some advice. I'd love to ask each of you to give a piece of advice or two for everyone on this call in terms of breaking into the industry. Kara, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, so it's funny because I think my biggest piece of advice to Georgetown students who want to work in entertainment would be to get to know GEMA and get as involved as you possibly can. But it seems like everyone who is on this panel and listening right now already knows about GEMA, which I think is a great first step. But I think second.
For the record, I met Kara when she was a student, right, at one of these career networking events.
Yeah, it was like a networking event in a conference room on campus.
That's right. And so that was probably 5, 6 years or 7 years ago. It's incredible.
A long time ago. And I think that this right along the same lines is use the Georgetown network, because there's a ton of people who are really going to be willing to help you out. And I think especially being in entertainment rather than in finance, there's fewer of us. And I think that when you're not getting inundated with 5,000 students who want to work in finance and want to go to Goldman Sachs, I think that as an alumni, you're able to give a lot more time and attention and growth opportunities to students who reach out. And then I think my biggest advice is find a mentor. And I mean, Rich, I have to shout out to you right now. Rich has been an incredible mentor to me from the moment we met at a networking event. And as someone who did not come from an entertainment family, my dad is a doctor and my mom is a marine biologist. I think just being able to ask the basic questions of someone you trust and to lean on someone to help guide you through big career decisions is so incredibly important. So find a mentor, I think, would be my biggest piece of advice. And thank you, Rich.
No, it's been a pleasure, and you know, it's a great. It's so rewarding to see how many of you, and you know, Neal, for the record, did the externship too, right? So all three of you did, and to fast forward and see how great everyone's doing it. It's just such a great testament to all of you and to the program. Alyse, same question for you.
Yeah, I really have to reiterate what Kara said. Mentorship, tap into the GEMA community. I think info interviews. Like I can't emphasize enough how important those are from a networking perspective, but also I think, you know, being in DC, it is hard to get a sense of the breadth of opportunity that there is in entertainment, and it really helps to understand there's super niche jobs, and I think through those info interviews you can start to better understand the landscape as well.
Yeah. Neal, same question to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of these are incredibly important and valid points. Being proactive, being intellectually curious, getting out there and learning about the industry, because it's also very dynamic. It changes all the time. It does not look the way that it did when I started in entertainment now, and it will not look the same in a few years. I'd also say that this is probably a time where creating content and getting out there is more accessible to more people as well. So doing that and actually being a practitioner of it will help you immensely as you're trying to navigate into the industry. There's very little that prevents you from starting your own podcast or really getting your own ideas out there. And I think that as someone who does look at a lot of candidates on a regular basis, when someone comes in with a point of view, that is always something that's really interesting and valuable, and not necessarily something that you need a ton of work experience in order to formulate.
So let's open it up for questions. We have some coming in. Here's a really good one that all three of you should have an opinion on. Would you recommend graduate education in marketing if your background does not reflect experience in the industry? Who wants to take that one first?
I could jump in on that.
Sure.
I don't think that there's an answer that I'm going to give that's probably going to be exactly what you want to hear, because the short answer is it depends. I mean, it really depends on where you are in your career and what you're trying to do. If you're able to find yourself in a company or an industry where you're really happy and successful and you can learn on the job and you can progress, then you should do that. If you're interested in identifying new opportunities, broadening your network and going out and trying to seek something new, then graduate school can be a really good avenue for you to pursue. But there really isn't a straightforward answer to that question. It's really going to depend on you and what you want to achieve and where you are.
Yeah, that's right. Alyse, do you want to chime in on that, or Kara?
Yeah, it's funny.
It's something you thought about an MBA, for instance.
Oh, of course. So that's right. It's funny because it is something that I tend to struggle with. I think in my career, I've had people just say, you're already in this company, you don't need it. However, what I struggle with is, you know, you look at our executive leadership, they all happen to have an extra degree. So to Neal's point, I think it really depends, looking at what it is you're trying to pursue. I've had a mentor to say, if you're ever sometimes it's nice to take a 2-year hiatus, and grad school can be that, and you can help kind of reorient and you know, build out that network in that time. So it's a frustrating answer, but I do think it depends. I certainly don't think it's essential.
Yeah, I think as someone who has an MBA, the other thing I'd add is a little bit on what Neal said was, one thing that's great about an MBA is it opens your world to so many industries and so many fields and functions. You know, so you go in and maybe you were a marketing person, I'm making up, in fashion. You worked for maybe you worked for a retail fashion brand. But when you go to business school, you know, you're going to be exposed to people who work in, you know, sports. You're going to be exposed to people who work in insurance. You're going to be exposed to people who work abroad. You're going to be exposed to people who work in, who've been in so many different other job functions. You may find out when you go to business school that you actually don't want to be in marketing anymore. You maybe thought you did, right? Or you say, you know what, I thought I want to be in marketing, but I actually really want to be in general management. Or I actually really think the more I see it, I want to be more involved in research or whatever it is. So to Neal's point, I think business school is great if either you feel like at your company, you need to have an MBA to move up. That happens too. There are definitely places, especially in sort of the packaged goods world. A lot of those people have MBAs, and a lot of CMOs now and chief marketing officers in all industries have MBAs. So, you know, I think in some cases you may need to do it, but I also agree with everyone that you don't necessarily need to do it to move ahead and have a, you know, flourishing career. Okay, we got a bunch of other questions coming in here. It's a good one. I'll start with Neal on this. Industry trends, broadly speaking, what do students need to know?
Wow.
You have a couple hours.
There's
Why
a
don't
lot
you
to
pick maybe one or two big trends that you think are obviously important in what's happening in the industry?
So I think the two things that are probably most topical right now in the entertainment industry is the role that streaming is playing, both in terms of consumption and economics. Just given what's happened in COVID this year, and if you think about what's happening with the movie landscape right now, it's absolutely front and center for how entertainment is being consumed. Obviously, I'm a little bit biased working for a streaming company in that regard, but I can wholeheartedly say that streaming has fundamentally changed the economics of the music industry. The second is more democratized access to content production. As I was talking about before, I think that there's just a wider breadth of creators now than there probably ever has been. And I think it's only going to proliferate as more platforms come about and we identify ways to monetize and elevate that talent in new and interesting ways.
Kara, do you have anything you want to add?
This is so small, but I was just going to say, like, TikTok, honestly, and understanding like a rising cultural trends and how to, as a brand or as a business, capitalize on them. I think TikTok is one of the biggest trends of quarantine and even, you know, the 6 months beforehand. And one thing that we've been working with clients is just understanding, should they be on TikTok? Usually the answer is yes. How should they be on TikTok? Which TikTok influencers should they be working with? What should they expect to pay for that? And then like how to be authentic on it, and how to really play into challenges and to show up in a way that viewers and consumers will appreciate. And obviously, you know, with everything going on with TikTok right now and whether or not it will exist in the US or will be acquired by Microsoft. I think just staying abreast of cultural trends is always important.
And they're changing so quickly, right? I mean, TikTok a year and a half ago was not even really a company, right?
Well, yeah, it was Musical.ly, you know, and then it transformed, and now it seems it might transform again. So yeah, it's always changing.
The speed is a huge trend. Alyse, how about you, especially particularly sports or sports leagues or franchises?
Yeah, I think what's really changed, at least in our company too, is just similar to that idea of TikTok. It's the power of using our players as marketing vehicles and also using them to help elevate their platforms as well. It's been really exciting to see. We're not just going to put out this corporate message. We have all these amazing players who we can really let speak on key issues as well.
What advice do you have? I knew someone asked this. This is a hard question to answer. What advice do you have for seniors right now in this new climate? I think they're referring to the pandemic particularly. Are there still opportunities in these industries right now? Who wants to jump in on that?
I can jump in.
Go for it, please.
Oh, sorry.
You go ahead, Kara.
Mine's quick. I think yes, it's a very different time, and you know, all of these big companies have hiring freezes, and that is a real reality right now. But I think it's still important to be reaching out to alumni and doing those informational interviews and getting firsthand information on, okay, you know, I know you guys are in a hiring freeze, but what exactly does that mean? Are you still interviewing folks? Is there like a backup list so that when hiring reopens, you know, how will that work? And can I do some work now so that I'm be placed on a list that gets first look once hiring opens back up? So I think, you know, it's even more important now than ever to be reaching out and setting informational interviews and learning about folks and their companies.
Neal, you wanted to add something?
I think Kara, you hit it on the head there. Just because the hiring timelines may be a little bit different today doesn't mean that you shouldn't be making those connections, because just as it's hard to find jobs, it's also hard to find talent right now. When those roles do emerge, because the process of bringing on people into companies is quite challenged now in a virtual model. So you want to know that there's good people that are, at the tip, at the top of your inbox, that you can reach out to really help as the landscape is changing. The other thing that I would say is, I know it was a different time, but I entered the job market right around 2008 when we hit a pretty big financial recession then, and obviously the ramifications of this, both in terms of public health and economics, are quite different. But I do know that that there is resilience in the market, and that these industries will change and grow and evolve. And so I wouldn't view this as kind of a nail in the coffin, so to speak. There's going to be many more opportunities that will surface down the road.
Yeah, I feel like also in a lot of ways, this is a silver lining in that folks are more accessible. I know that sounds a little counterintuitive, but anyone can jump on a Zoom call for a few minutes, in a way where if I was living in New York and wanted to connect with Los Angeles, that was more of a hurdle than it is during this time.
Yeah, no doubt Zoom's been a big important strategy to connect with people. The other thing I would say too is, and you all know this, there are certain parts of the industry, frankly, that have, thrived during the pandemic, that are, gaming and music, and obviously sports has taken a big hit in a lot of ways, but there are other areas that have done are doing tremendously well, and streamers. And so one of my pieces of advice is try to look at companies that are doing well, because they are growing and hiring and needing new talent and needing people. They're not putting the brakes as much as sort of traditional media companies have had to, or traditional sports leagues and the like have had to. So, I think that pertains to sort of the Silicon Valley world, and companies that are kind of like Spotify, that play in the intersection of tech and media. Those companies are in a lot of ways doing very well right now. So I would definitely focus on those kinds of companies for job opportunities right now, because a lot of those folks haven't furloughed. A lot of those folks haven't made hiring freezes. Even the Facebooks and the Apples and the Googles, they're all moving forward very aggressively. There's a couple other pandemic-related questions here. One is, how do you see digital marketing and the greater communications industry, why don't we maybe keep it to digital marketing now, being impacted in the long term from the global pandemic? And is there actually a long-term impact from the global pandemic?
I think that
Neal, you must be dealing with this every day. Or
there's a few things. One is, the advertising market is looking quite different right now than it did 6 to 8 months ago, and there's a significant volume of advertisers that have pulled back budgets as a result of the changes in their business model. That's going to stay with us for probably a little bit of time, unfortunately, and it's going to impact a significant number of the significant sector of the market that's supported by advertising. I think that we were talking about TikTok and other platforms. Platform proliferation is still continuing to be a very prominent trend. I think one trend that has been really important and interesting to see is how brands and marketers are interacting with major platforms now around hate speech and censorship, and many of you may have seen that a number of brands did boycott Facebook for the month of July as part of their media mixes. And I think that there is going to be a very important and ongoing debate that will continue to happen in the business community on that topic, and the responsibility that a lot of the platforms will play as not only places where people are sharing information, but where brands are looking to showcase themselves.
Anyone else want to chime in on that one?
I'll just say, I don't know if this is direct to digital marketing, but just I think corporations in general, this moment has made them extremely aware of their like corporate responsibility to humans outside of their business objectives. I mean, you know, the first couple of months of March when we all quarantined, we had Delta and General Motors and LinkedIn and Google come to us, and some were, hey, we're GM and we need to stop making cars. We're going to start making masks. And or like LinkedIn came to us and they're like, this is going to be an incredible, you know, the moment for unemployment and for people who are going to be furloughed and laid off and no longer be able to, or graduating from college and not be able to find that first job. And how do we help alleviate this problem? So I think that I have already noticed long-term strategies shifting towards corporate responsibility and like, hey, how do we make our business goals align with our customers' goals and really find nice ways to dovetail these strategies together in a way that helps the greater good. I truly think and hope that that will continue.
You know, I think too, you know, there are obvious trends and shifting of consumption that were happening pre-COVID, and obviously towards, you know, from traditional media like broadcast and cable over to streamers, as for example, or you know, not going to movie theaters. And I think what we've seen from coronavirus is that it's just accelerated those trends dramatically. And I don't think, you know, you're ever going back really. Now, will movie theaters still remain? Of course they will. But even since COVID happened, and some of you who stay involved in the business and monitor it, is the movie studios are now changing what's called the windows of how long they have their movies stay in movie theater. They used to stay in for 60 days, 70 days, 80 days. They're now going to movie theaters and saying, I only want my movie in your theater for 20 days, 30 days, because I know that I can, you know, make a lot of money having these on my streaming devices or offer it at home for a fee to people. So these are, you know, incredibly important shifting trends that are happening that have all been certainly accelerated by COVID. Another question related to the pandemic is they've asked if you could all, each of you, tell how the pace of your work has changed, and maybe the nature of your work has changed since the pandemic has started. Alyse, you want to start on that one?
It's been nonstop. I think everyone is pretty understaffed as well. So quite frankly, we're working longer hours and with no real end in sight. I'm usually an optimist, but yeah, it's been.
And you're probably on Zooms from 8:30 to 6:30 every night, right? Flat through.
It's certainly during draft, yes. And now is kind of the quiet before the storm. But I think just being flexible as well. There's a lot of plans to make plans, knowing that things are changing every day.
Yeah. How about you, Neal or Kara? How's your work life changed being home?
I think that for the first week, maybe, right? With the first week we were home, everyone, including our brand clients, no one knew really what to do or how to continue on in the work that we had been doing together. So I think that there was like a 1 week lull and then it just exploded. We're then helping all of our clients figure out how they should be responding. And, you know, Petco was a client at the time, and you can literally see, I'm sorry, my cat, foster cat in the background is being distracting. But, you know, they came to us and they said, all these shelters are closing. Like, we have to get animals out. Like, how do we partner with talent to get this word out around fostering and adopting animals? So I think just all of a sudden, everything exploded. And, you know, I almost felt like we no longer had weekends because every day was the same. And I found that like I was constantly working over weekends, and because I wasn't like driving to meetings and we weren't like flying to see clients, I feel like we almost had more hours in the day to like shove meetings into. So yeah. It's been busy.
Yeah. Neal?
I mean, I think Zoom fatigue is a real thing.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's been clinically diagnosed yet, but it probably will be at some point. But it's I think the thing that's you know, just to everything everybody said is absolutely spot on. Creating more structure in your day for yourself has been really important for me, and making sure you're kind of carving out that time to go for a jog or get out or go for a walk or talk about things that are not work related has been very important.
Because a lot of people think, well, the commute time has gone away, so therefore you have more free time. But in some cases, that's being, you know, you're substituting that for more meetings, I imagine, right? So you got to, like you said, have to make sure you could easily be on a Zoom from 8 to 6 and blink and forget that you didn't even leave your chair, I imagine, which is very different than when you're in a work environment. I would also think, and I think this is a really important issue, work from home issue going forward, is just how do you onboard new employees. And how do you get new employees to feel like they're part of a company when they're not able to even physically meet? Think about, I'm sure all three of you guys have had people join the company since, since the pandemic, and you can't even physically meet these people. So I have to believe that's an issue that will continue to be one that people have to work through. I think we're just about out of time, Justin, right? Oh, actually, let me just make one more point about the externship, because I get asked a lot about it. The externship is for seniors. To be frank, we're still not sure, based on this uncertainty we all talk about, we're still not sure if the externship will happen in person or not. It happens in March during their senior year spring break, so we honestly just don't know yet. We'll certainly look to do it on a virtual basis if we can, for sure. That would be the goal. But if any of you are interested in learning more about it, Jackie Banks, who oversees the Cawley Center and works very close, oversees the GEMA the GEMA externship with us at the Cawley Center. She's the person to reach out to. And I know at some point she'll be doing an orientation, but again, I can't emphasize enough how that can be a great opportunity. It is competitive. So if you apply, doesn't mean you'll get it, but I certainly hope all of you will think about it. And I think the other thing I'd just say to answer also about what to be doing now is really learning as much you can about the business, taking this time. I think one of the things for me, I'm not in a full-time job right now. I've just taken such advantage of educating and informing myself. There's so many free Zooms out there, and with high quality content and high quality panelists. So I would really take this opportunity to do that in addition to trying to network. If anyone's interested in meeting people in a certain part of the industry, you can email us at GEMA. We read the info at GEMA emails we get, and we try to help everyone we can. So best of luck to everybody. And I want to thank our three fantastic panelists for taking their time. They'll all have to run back to Zoom meetings for their companies, I'm sure. But I really want to thank Alyse, Neal, Cara, really appreciate your time, and hope everyone found this enriching and informative. And Justin, thank you to you.
Yep, and thank you everyone for attending. Just as a reminder, we do have another GEMA View next week on agencies, the same time, same place. So if you're interested, sign up for that. But other than that, thank you all so much for joining, and thank you all to our panelists.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Have a good Thursday. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.